Welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 33, Freedom, Interdependence, and the State of the Nation. I'm Michelle Hawk, and I'm here with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird. This podcast offering was born out of our dear friendship, our deep conversations about life, the universe, and everything, what it means to be a spiritual mentor and a healer in this world, and eventually deciding to make these conversations available to you, the public, and fellow soul seekers on the path. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to this 4th of July special episode where we're delving into a little bit into freedom and the idea of independence and interdependence and the implications for what those concepts truly mean for us as the collective consciousness who are together on this journey called life. So, Kat, how are you doing?
I'm amazing. I'm a little, there's been a lot going on. I've been very busy. I haven't really had a lot of just down, rest, nothing, recently. So, I'm definitely feeling a little bit of that. I just finished a session from, like a 3-hour session since 9 a.m. and I usually
Wow.
work until 11 a.m. So, definitely kind of, pushing a little bit in lots of different areas. So I'm good. I'm here. I can definitely feel myself like, okay, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I enjoyed a really magical few days. And yesterday I took pretty much completely off. I worked a very small amount, but today I have a couple of appointments lined up. So it's not really a holiday for me. But let's drop into freedom as a kind of our first exploration. I know this is something that we talk a lot about in the spiritual community. You know, what is freedom? The freedom to do whatever. What does it mean to be truly free, to be free of karma? And this is something, the reason that we're talking about this today is we have, this national holiday, the Independence Day, right? And but what does that truly mean from the spiritual perspective and from the perspective of the seeker and from someone, here we're looking at what is not only the role of in our own personal development of consciousness, but for the collective as well. So let's drop into freedom a little bit. What does
Yay,
that mean?
yay, freedom. And my numerology is 5, which is freedom. And one of the things that I've always known about myself is that freedom is very important, and that freedom, a lot of times in the past, um, I felt like the only way for freedom to happen is for to push against, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to rebel and kind of push against whatever is kind of the status quo, and do the opposite in order to get freedom. Like there is this very contrarian sort of experience of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of us as spiritual seekers kind of have that. We come out of maybe, cultures and homes and stuff where there was more constriction. And so we need to open and get really big and blast everything out in order to have that sensation of freedom. But then also through my own, inner work and really looking at my numerology is freedom is through discipline, which has always been more of a challenge for me, even though I have then started to reorganize my thoughts around discipline into devotion,
Mm-hmm.
and to find the devotionary acts that actually, by doing, create freedom in my life. So I think that for me personally, there's been a shift from freedom means you do whatever all the time, and it's completely just chaos magic sort of experience of freedom and really going through so many different processes of learning specific modalities and techniques and processes whereby we achieve freedom spiritually, physically, emotionally, through a structured experience, through a discipline, through doing something over and over again, or doing something that's very uncomfortable, that feels constrictive, that doesn't feel like freedom at all, and that through that constriction and then we actually get to breathe and open into a new level and awareness of freedom within ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And I've definitely witnessed you and also been on some of that journey myself over the last couple of years of the discipline, devotion, kind of two sides of that same coin. And I love that, that was one of my big themes over the last year of devotion. And freedom for me, yes, I hear you on the structure. And for me, I want to add in my interpretation, the element of flow, being in alignment with the energies that are flowing and being a clear channel. Because I hear you, I think especially as people are going through an awakening, or as people are claiming the parts of who they are, or again, pushing against, having that resistance against societal norms or what we are taught to believe or taught to be, there's almost an overcorrection to the other side of, oh, freedom means I get to do whatever the fuck I want, and be really explosive and all over the place with how the choices that we're making. And the rebel, right, is one of the archetypes of that is really associated with freedom. And yet that it's a small piece of freedom. And what I have found, freedom is really truly being in alignment with yes, it is what I want, but it's not in a frenetic way. It's in a very focused way where I'm not exploding my energy all over the place to disperse it to a million different things. It's no, I am claiming this is the path with which I am aligning myself, and how can I most effectively and efficiently align my energies with the currents that are already in place in order to have the freedom to surrender and the freedom to be supported in where I'm directing my energy. So that ties in also with our last couple of episodes that we did on cycles of power. So for those of you who missed our cycles of power episodes, there was some really good information in there. And freedom is, we talk a lot, and I feel called, I'm being tapped on a little bit, I'm getting some guidance here to talk about the slavery clause. I think this may have come up in a previous episode. Kat, do you remember, did I tell you about this at all?
I don't think so.
Okay. This is based on a channeling that I did maybe 6 months ago or so, where the slavery clause that is written into the contract of every single human who is born on Earth during this time. And by this time, whenever we're receiving messages about, oh, this is currently relevant to humanity, we're kind of looking at thousands of years on either side, right? And so over the last several thousand years, and probably, continuing into the future, every human who has been born on Earth has had a slavery clause written into their soul contract. Again, this is based on some deep channeling work I did last year sometime. And I remember when I learned that, we all have this slavery clause in our soul contract. I remember hearing that and asking, well, do I have that clause in my soul contract? And I was shown my soul contract. And yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I have this slavery clause written into my soul contract, but it was faded. It's like someone had erased it poorly, but I could still see where this slavery clause was. And I asked why that was the case. And they're saying part of the work that humans are doing now, again, over this period of thousands of years, is erasing the slavery clause and replacing it with a sovereignty clause. So as we collectively do the work, we individually do the work to erase our clause of slavery and replace it with one of sovereignty, again, kind of coming back to freedom, spiritual freedom, and claiming our our place as divine embodied beings and our sovereign selves, we get to replace the slavery contract. And I said, well, why is it not, I was asking my guides, why is it not erased completely? And they said, as long as one being on earth has this slavery clause still intact in their contract, this slavery clause will exist for every being on earth. And so that really speaks to, again, our process, our individual process is deeply tied to the collective process. As we work in our efforts for sovereignty, in our efforts for freedom, yes, we're benefiting ourselves, but we are, we're planting the seed of freedom and the seed of sovereignty in all beings. And yet we are not truly free and sovereign until all beings are truly free and sovereign.
Absolutely. That's beautiful, Michelle.
Yeah.
And, something that we, obviously probably aren't aware of and, don't have access to that as information. And, it's also, something I know that I've been working with recently is feeling into and doing a lot of deep soul recoding around, an indentured servant contract that encoding in my system that I've had, and really going in and rewriting that and shifting that on a very deep level. And so, a lot of us are sort of, we get stuck and we're like, well, why? Like, why can't I figure out how to make any money? And why am I always in these relationships? And why does my life feel so this contraction in this way? Like, I don't have freedom. And yet my code, for me, it's like freedom is my thing, right? So, the lessons that we're here to learn, if I'm here to learn freedom, I'm coded to learn freedom. Of course, part of what I'm going to come in with is some sort of essence and experience of not being free and needing to navigate through that process of finding freedom within myself.
Mm-hmm.
And healing and shifting the stuff that's being held within my system that has to do with freedom. And then also, because that is such an intrinsic part of me, that my work is a reflection of that. So my work in the world, it's like when we know if something is part of who we are, then it helps us realize how that our work is informed by that part of us, right? Like, I'm very interested in people having freedom in their lives. And even in, like, I don't want people to feel like they're reliant on me as a practitioner. And I want to empower people to do their practices and to do their work and to build their businesses and to do everything they need to do to have that sensation of freedom for themselves. Not like, oh, I have to keep, going to this one person forever in order to feel freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's intrinsic to who we are. It's within our natures to learn how to navigate freedom for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. We've thrown out a few terms here that are all really deeply related. So the idea of freedom, empowerment, and sovereignty, these are all really deeply intertwined concepts. Freedom and the nature of freedom and interdependence and independence, we're bringing that into because it's Independence Day, right? And going back to the collective consciousness aspect of this work, where you are doing work to bring freedom to yourself and empower yourself to have freedom, and empowering your clients to build the structures that they need to be truly free. That's one of the things that shows up in my work too, is how can we clear those karmic signatures that keep us tied to vows of servitude, vows of poverty, whatever agreements, soul contracts and agreements we have to not be free. That's a big part of what we're doing collectively in the healing work of all society at this time. interdependence and independence, I want to shift our attention to. Today is called Independence Day, and I feel, first of all, I don't really resonate with a lot of the national holidays, quite honestly. I'm just like, okay, great, big deal. And part of it is I work for myself, so I don't really take days off anyway, unless they're my own personal holidays. But also I look at what is the spirit, the original spirit of the holiday, and how is it still celebrated or relevant, or how is it not super relevant or not super helpful? So I remember over the last several years really kind of having a problem with the idea of Independence Day. Something that, we're celebrating nationalism, we're celebrating, the original spirit was celebrating sovereignty, celebrating freedom, like true freedom of expression, celebrating religious freedom, celebrating, again, that victory of releasing, from the oppression and that resistance that was going on. That was an example of, Kat, what you were mentioning at the very beginning of our episode, where freedom that comes through resistance and freedom that comes through the I forget what word you used exactly, but the pressing against, right? And yet the meaning of that really has been lost and been shifted. And this, the idea of independence, I think, especially in Western culture, look at the ideals that we grow up with, where people are, it's idealized to be independent, to say, I don't need anybody, to be separate, to move out of your parents' house by the time you're 18, whether you're, grounded and financially stable or not. And in this day and age, most people are not. Or to, or severely in debt, or to not ask for help, or to be so fiercely invested of, I'm independent, I can take care of myself, that you have a whole neighborhood where every single house owns a lawnmower, but okay, maybe the neighborhood can share a lawnmower, right? So this idea of glorified independence and separation, I feel like, is really part of that overcorrection that we were talking about, of freedom kind of in that direction of chaos a little bit, like freedom to do whatever I want, as opposed to channeled freedom. What thoughts do you have about that? Independence, interdependence?
Well, I think that it's, just like we said, that overcorrection, like that's our tendency, right? Is that we swing wildly from one direction to the other,
Mm-hmm.
hoping that somehow we're going to end up, at the sweet spot. And the sweet spot actually is a lot of work. And, like there's a lot of unconscious behaviors and, that we're looking at, we're looking at all those things, right? That, okay, well, none of us are sharing anything. So basically it's become this, encouraged, this encouraged independence based on consumerism.
Mm.
That we all have our own car and we all have our own house and we all have our own everything and nobody shares anything. And, the resources are doled out to, if you have this much money, you get this, and this is what you get if you're poor. And, so we stop relying on each other. And just as in the same, and then people are lonely and they're cut off, they have no connection. We have a lot of older people that are just dying alone, and we have a lot of parents who are trying to work 3 jobs because they're disconnected from community and family, and they don't feel like they have support. We see so many people that are medicating, self-medicating, or whatever kind of medicating they're doing, because they don't have the social interactions and structure to be able to support them in feeling a sense of actual freedom, where you feel like, wow, I'm so free that I have like support in my life, and I have friends, and I have companionship, and I have love, and like how much that fills up your heart with freedom. And instead we're like, okay, freedom means how much money can you make? And then you're in this little mansion behind a gate by yourself, all alone. Or, if you're not able to make money, then you're kind of in this little apartment all alone. And, the connections, we lose those connections. So, is it possible that we're at this point in this place where, maybe through tougher circumstances than we might like, we are called to start to, recreate a connected society for ourselves. Not that it's going to be given to us, because our government seems to have been taken over by, people who are making money, and us being disconnected makes more money. It sells all kinds of things when we're disconnected.
Yeah.
So it seems that it's up to us to actually make the shifts in the way that we live and the way that we interact with each other to support this interdependence experience, instead of feeling like I'm so in this all alone, I'm the only one on this path, that, when something goes wrong, there's nowhere to turn except for, like, committing suicide or taking drugs or, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Interdependence. I think it's not necessarily an intuitive path where, oh, I can actually create more freedom in my life through structure, through relationships, through connections. And that's some of the work that I think we're doing, is redefining freedom, and redefining the way in which we get there. I remember a few months ago having a really beautiful conversation with a brother of mine, a dear medicine brother, who for years has been working for a nonprofit, been really doing amazing work with supporting teenagers in mindfulness and meditation. So doing beautiful work, deep service work. And yet he had to work not only that job, but, at least one, maybe two other jobs in order to support himself. And he was barely making any money, and not able to support some family members who really needed some financial support, not able to show up the way he wanted to in partnership with his amazing partner, and not able to, he was not free, even though he was doing something he loved really deeply. There was no room for him to actually live the way that he wanted to live. So he ended up quitting those jobs, and stopping working for the nonprofit. And he got a job working, I don't know exactly what he's doing now, but he has a salary. It's more of a corporate job. And he is telling me he feels better than he's felt in a long time, because he's aligning himself with different energies, where this is the structure that I created for myself to have this job. And I get to, have this job, which feeds me financially, which, I have off hours now. When he's working all these other jobs, he didn't have any time off, and he would come home and still be working and not be able to participate in his life and his partnership. He says, now I have, really clear, this is when I'm working, this is when I'm not working. And then I come home, and it's a practice in devotion to show up to my partner, to show up to my home, to clean my house. It's a really beautiful freedom that he's allowed to actually live the way that he wants to live through this structure that he created for himself. He's also finding that he's much more available to create community connections. He has more free time. He has more energy to invest in his social network, his social interactions, and actually spend time with the people whom he enjoys. So I found that it made so much sense to me. And it made also a lot of sense when he was telling me he was receiving some pushback from a few people who were saying, no, you can't quit this job because you're doing such amazing work with these teenagers, and really, placing the priority on the service and the work. And yet there's so much more freedom that is created in his life through this structure, and through being, kind of prioritizing the community, prioritizing taking care of his, the family and everything. And ultimately weaving that web of interdependence where he gets to support people financially now. He wasn't in a position to do that earlier. He gets to spend more time with these people. So again, it's like this almost counterintuitive of, in what ways am I sacrificing freedom in order to create more freedom to actually live the way that we want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I think that, like, I think the lesson of that is that it's often outside the box. It's often the thing that we don't think to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the, like, okay, well, this doesn't make any sense, thing to do that might give us the thing that we're looking for. And, for some people that's having a job, and for some people that's quitting the job, and for some people that's, going and living in a community, and for some people that's, you know absolutely not living in a community is going to make me feel free. So it's, allowing that each personal journey is, like, I mean, that's that independence piece, right? That you get to decide, not just what your parents are saying or your community is saying, or, even, what your friends or other advisors might be saying, but what's really, really, truly true for you in your heart.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I keep coming back to, where freedom to me means clear flow of energy. What is the way in which you yourself, your system, is the most free to be a conduit for energy, to be a conduit for your purpose, your joy, and your love here on earth? And again, that's going to look different for everybody. So Kat, like you were saying, for some people, freedom means living in community and having that support. And for some people, freedom means living alone. That's, a really good and relevant example, I think, as a lot of people are shifting by financial necessity towards community living models and, reclaiming that aspect of interdependence. It's really important, and viewers, this is where I'll kind of invite you to take a moment now, and actually always, like, do this, all the time. Take a moment to assess your energy systems and really ask yourself, when do I feel the most free? Like, what does freedom mean for me? When do I feel the most clear? When are my systems the most empowered and grounded and clear and centered, so that I can freely conduct energy through my body, through my energetic sphere, in the most efficient and effective way, in order to be in alignment with my purpose and in alignment with the way that I want to be living my life? These are some deeply relevant questions. And, Kat, I know we always find ourselves coming back to the awareness component in pretty much every single episode, because that's where it all starts, is awareness of what is truly the most compatible means of running your energy through your system to empower yourself to claim true freedom.
Yes.
Woohoo.
Yes.
Yay. Like, we should do a little exercise or something, but I'm not sure what. Feels like, I'm not sure. Like a journaling or something.
Okay, go for it.
I don't know, maybe just what I said, and maybe, people, if you're watching this on YouTube later, you can go back and do that as a journaling exercise. Okay, that's, optional homework. If you feel like doing that as a journaling exercise, I think that would be really beneficial, and I'm actually going to do that myself later.
Okay, repeat it again.
I don't remember what I said. It was so good. It was something along the lines of assessing your systems to call awareness to when do I feel the most free and clear? Like, when are my energies clear, grounded, centered, and full, so that I can most freely and efficiently conduct energy through my body in order to be in alignment with my joy, love, and purpose.
Yes.
There you go. That's a journaling prompt.
That's a journaling exercise.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about, sovereignty a couple times. You mentioned it. And, this is one of the most important aspects of being able to do, very deep spiritual work and healing work, and, working with others, we're having clients, working with spirits, if you're called to work with spirits. Our sense of sovereignty is one of those most vital, important pieces, which is, that, staking the claim of the I am, and, that I am the only one allowed inside of this body as I choose. That I am making the decisions about my life. I am, in control of the spiritual experience, of the healing experience that I'm having or facilitating, and utilizing that sense of sovereignty to then allow us to play. That without that very solid sense of a sovereign self, we often get in trouble. We pick up hitchhikers and get energetic debris dragging us down. And for those of us who maybe came from a place where that sense of self was not encouraged, or it wasn't okay to be expressive of like who you are, or boundaries, you're not allowed to have your boundaries aren't going to be respected in this house. Reinstating and even just that proclamation of I am a sovereign being, I am a sovereign being, I am a sovereign being on a very regular basis, to start to build that within the system is of huge importance. Because the freedom that we're seeking, the spiritual freedom, the ability to, maybe work with guides or healing spirits, or to have these very deep meditations, that's like soaring, right? It's playing. It's this sense of freedom, of a boundlessness in a certain kind of way. And the more, we've talked about this before. We talked about this a lot on our episode around shamanic journeying and astral traveling, around, being able to really blast off and do these spiritual adventures takes a very deep sense of sovereignty, that independence of self in the world, of owning who we are and having that very strong tether into our physical body and into our form, that's going to keep us very safe and grounded and held through our awakening processes and our spiritual experiences.
Absolutely. The container also that is held for that to take place. I think a really good example was, exactly, our episode on shamanic journey and astral travel, for sure. Also, sort of immediately relevant when we did our episode last week on integration, having just come off of this very deep, profound ceremony. During the ceremony, there was enormous freedom to play and to soar and to interact with these really profound energies in a very deep way. And that freedom was there because of the care and the precision that was taken in crafting the boundaries in a very structured, very, not rigid, because it wasn't like there was this stiffness there, but it was a really solid container that then allowed enormous expansion and depth and freedom. So again, I think, coming back to the practice, right? For those, I know many of the people who watch this show are spiritual seekers, healers, practitioners, shamans in various modalities, etc. And there is so much freedom that comes from, again, going back to one of the very first things you said, the discipline and the devotion, the rules that are there for a reason, not just for the sake of dogma. That's where we get into the rules and the practices as oppression, but the rules that are there to create structure to allow for even greater expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So, I think it's interesting. We kind of keep coming back to this point around, shifting our own internal awarenesses around chaos, freedom, to having like what happens when I add some structure to my experience, so that I'm able to allow surrender, right? Allow myself to surrender into this experience of what freedom is for my life. I see a lot of healers who, they get the message they're a healer. They maybe go study some energetic modalities or physical bodywork modalities, and then have just an enormous struggle with everything else, and the truth is that it's the everything else that often is the make it or break it, as far as being successful, being able to feed yourself and clothe yourself and have a place to live. As far as being being a healer, it's the hours and hours that you spend putting in on the stuff that we don't want to spend our time on, which is like, sitting down in front of the computer and building the website and networking and marketing and sales and administrative work and sending notes to people and following up and responding to emails quickly, and like all of these things that we're like, oh, I want to be a healer, or I want to be a coach. I have somebody the other night was talking about wanting to be a coach, and it was like, oh, well, I'll just go and take this training and they're going to help me, they're going to give us tools on finding your first 5 clients. And I'm like, then they'll be great. I'll have a business. Like, it's not how it actually works. It's actually, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things on cultivating clients and relationships and building collaborations and a lot of times when you're sitting with the work that has to be done and being like, wow, this sucks. Like, I don't even want to be doing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other hand, I've been through that so many years of like building businesses and working and doing all this stuff. And now, like, even though sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm working way too much because I've just overscheduled myself, but there's this sensation inside of me that's like, oh my gosh, how much freedom that I have, that I get to take a day off whenever I want, really. If I really wanted to have called and just canceled everything today, I could have. And
yeah, but you never do that.
I never do that, but
right, and I never do that either. But the possibility exists.
The possibility exists. I can plan a vacation. I can take a trip. I can do what I love because I love my work. So that in itself, that feels like so much freedom to me, that I get like, oh my gosh, I get to do this for a living. Like, I get to sit and help somebody channel through their galactic guide. Like, are you kidding? That's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like freedom to me. But if I hadn't spent all these last years, like, okay, I've got to figure out how to write copy. I've got to figure out how to get this website up. I've got to figure out how to do this and this and this and this. Which is very structure, is very kind of mundane. I wouldn't be here in this expansion of freedom. And in the same sort of that same vein, I also see a lot of healers and stuff getting into this work and are struggling so hard because they're good at the work, but they're shit at doing a practice. They can't get themselves to do the meditations or do anything, yoga, qigong, tai chi, like whatever it is that's going to support them in their lives. Like, they're just like, I'm not doing the stuff. And that makes it really hard to advance in this work. It takes that structure and discipline, and I have pushed against it so hard my whole so much. But the one thing I've learned is that piece around the discipline, around holding the energy, around seeing how much energy you can have inside your body, mm-hmm. and holding it in there until it's so fucking uncomfortable that that's really the only way that we're going to be able to hold space for people and do the work that's being called to be done right now.
Yeah. Kat, let's share some of our practices, some of our structures that we have in place with our people. So, just to give an idea of how have we set ourselves up in order to be in alignment with freedom. So for me, some of my practices, I have my personal practices and I have my business practices as well. Some of my personal practices are, being really cognizant of my nutrition and my sleep. those are practices in devotion and discipline, but really devotion. What am I feeding myself? Keeping track of what I'm eating and noticing, per the recommendation of a nutritional therapist friend of mine, I started keeping a food journal several months ago, like I don't know, 6 months ago or so. So I was able to track when I eat this kind of food, my body feels this way. And that made it so glaringly obvious to me the things that I can be offering myself in devotion in order to feel the most energetic and free and expansive. Being really protective of my sleep schedule and really honoring, when I need to sleep, honoring my cycles during the day when I feel like I have the most energy. So I tend to, I don't take my first appointment before 11 o'clock in the morning, usually 10 at like the earliest, because I'm spending those first couple of hours in the day journaling and running. Those are two of my very important personal practices where I will sit and journal and meditate, and then I'll go run and put it in my body. So whatever I was just journaling about, then when I'm running, I move it from here, because when it's journaling, even if it's intuitive journaling, it's still up here in the upper chakras. And then I'll breathe it down as I'm running. So I will then bring the energy of whatever I was journaling about into my body, ground it all the way into my sacral and my root chakras. Those are some of my really fundamental personal practices. Admittedly, I could be a little bit more consistent with receiving body work and energy healing. That's something that I am currently building into my devotion practice of remembering, oh, that's right. It feels really good when I get massages and when I go support myself in devotion through receiving as well. On the business front, these, Kat, pretty much everything that you listed about having the website, having a newsletter, doing, honestly, this is a structure, this podcast that we create every week together. Yes, it is a joy and we love doing it. And it's also part of a structure of supporting both of our businesses and creating new content every week. So, following all the normal business stuff, all the accounting and emails and the phone calls and, the whole list of all of that isn't my favorite thing to do either. And yet when I treat it as this offers me the freedom to do the thing that I love most in the world, which is diving deep into my healing work, then it makes it that much easier for me to spend all those hours in front of the computer doing things that otherwise I would never be caught dead doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, kind of some of that same stuff around food, around, supplementation and nutrition and sleep for sure. Sometimes I need so much sleep, it's ridiculous. And sometimes I don't get as much sleep as I should. But that's my one of my places. And but as far as my practice in the morning is to read prayers. I read at least 3 prayers out loud in the morning, and I do some sort of physical energetic practice every morning. So I get my yoga mat out. I kind of have this 10 songs that I listen to almost the same every day, and the different songs they're randomized, but the different songs sort of have these different practices that I've sort of been playing with them with. And then being able to kind of sit and just be present. And I don't do anything. I don't have any client calls before 11 a.m. Usually. Today was 9 a.m. was super insanity for me. It just never happens, but it was a must have happen experience. So I'm very conscious of timing on things. I try to build days off into my weekly schedule. I know that's something I never used to do. I was like, I can't do that because people need to see me. And I started to realize more and more that if I just take things off my calendar, they don't know. They don't know whether I'm busy and I'm seeing people or if I'm taking a day off. Either way, they're not getting a session. So they're okay to wait a couple days. To not freak out over that was huge for me, and to be okay, it's safe for me to take some time off. um, you know, the structures for my business of you know, being committed to sit down and actually, like, I have a online list of stuff that I have to do and are in progress and are done. And so I have times when I sit down and I just hammer out that list. And um, you know, there's also a lot of structure in you know, in my work and clearing myself and doing clearing practices and invoking the spirits and guides to come in and do the work, and also closing the space at the end. And you know, there's structure there, even though a lot of my work sometimes seems like, oh, it's now this is happening and now this is happening. And there's a lot of intuition and a lot of guidance that's happening, but it's within a container of some kind of structure. And those pieces, so all of those things, even though for me it took a long time for me to see that this was true, that structure of life and the discipline, the devotion, being committed, those pieces have assisted me in this experience of having freedom in my life and being able to kind of like live this amazing life that I super love.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And also you're a little bit better than I am about consistently making appointments for yourself to receive regular body work and energy work. I know that's something that I've witnessed you do and kind of made a mental note of, like, oh, that's something that Kat is doing. Kat's getting acupuncture. I should go get acupuncture. That's right. I haven't had acupuncture in like 2 years. So that's,
oh my God, acupuncture is so good.
it's so good. And I love it. And I know that, right?
It's so good.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that we can speak to is that is asking for help.
Yeah.
And seeking guidance, seeking mentors, seeking teachers. You know, I just spent this last Thursday, Friday, Saturday in a mastermind with my business coach and an amazing group of people, wizards and geniuses. You know, working on our businesses and working on ourselves very deeply. And that is invaluable. And there's a lot of structure there. I mean, we were working from 11 a.m. to 11:30 at night for 3 days in a row. And there was a lot of structure. And within that container, we could achieve a greater sense of freedom. And the interdependence.
Exactly. The interdependence that comes from that, you know, especially we did, I think it was, you know, our very first episode, I keep going back to, that we talked about building spiritual community and the importance of building community. And that's something that I know we hear so many people who contact us individually or together who are feeling really alone in this work. And yet, you know, that interdependence that comes from seeing and witnessing other people who are in the same line of work as you or along a similar path as you, and getting to cheer each other on and support each other. Kat and I do that for each other, you know, and, you know, we're super close. We love doing that for each other and witnessing each other. And our clients, you know, we have our tribes of our clients too, and getting to create that sense of community, even though they don't know each other necessarily. There's this like, oh, there's this whole other group of people who's going through a similar journey. Or I have all my Reiki students are, I make sure to connect them. They've got, you know, this group of all my Reiki students over the years who can build relationships with each other and get together and trade sessions with each other and learn to build community that way. So the interdependence that comes from getting to catalyze each other further in our work and witnessing together is so beautiful.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other tips you have for people as we're like diving into our own freedom and what that means and our own sovereignty? And
Yeah, I think exploring again, you know, kind of redefining freedom is one of the first parts. What does freedom actually mean for you? When and then, once you figure that out of, okay, freedom means that I am able to do, and have these things in my life. Those, and actually those are three that I really like to encourage people to think about. When I am free, I am this, I do this, and I have this. So kind of think about that. What does that mean for me when I am free? And noticing when and under what circumstances do those I be, or I am, I do, and I have these things. When do we do that? When do we get to be that? When do we get to have that? And then how can we align our energies to that frequency in the most efficient and effective way in order to create the freedom and the flow of energy, the flow of circumstances, the flow of our relationships, the flow of our work in the world, to be in alignment with having more of that, being more of that, and doing more of that, which makes us feel truly free and expansive and sovereign. So that's what I would suggest, is really start evaluating, start asking yourself these questions. We live in a society that teaches us a lot of tolerance. We very easily tolerate our lives, or we tolerate relationships, we tolerate living situations, we tolerate financial situations, we tolerate jobs, we tolerate family, but because for whatever reason we feel like we can't change it or we can't have anything different. Yet asking ourselves, does this person in my life contribute to my feeling of freedom or detract from my feeling of freedom? Does this job in my life contribute to my feeling of freedom or detract from my feeling of freedom? Starting to bring ourselves in that evaluation process and really being willing to take action upon it. Again, going back to our discussion around the slavery clause and the sovereignty clause, we will not be truly free and sovereign until every being on this planet is truly free and sovereign. So how do we start? Because that sounds a little bit like a monumental task. We start with ourselves. And when I am truly free and sovereign, I can support other people in helping them be truly free and sovereign, and inspiring and catalyzing them in that. So, and that's how we do it. We do it slowly, and we do it, starting here internally and claiming that for ourselves, really staking in the I am, Kat, that you were talking about, the I am principle. And yeah. So that's your homework. Claim your sovereignty. No big deal, right? Just, yeah.
Beautiful, Michelle. Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's amazing. That's a lot for us to focus on. And now everybody go eat hot dogs and watch fireworks. I don't know. Oh, I'm gonna go to work.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do a session and then comfort my dog. Fireworks are the worst. I hate fireworks. She hates fireworks, and that's my plan every 4th of July, is go over to my parents' house and hang out with my dog, who is just a mess.
Yeah, right. So I think that's kind of where a lot of us are, is just like making sure the dog doesn't freak out. Yeah. And so happy independence, happy freedom, happy sovereignty.
Yeah. And happy interdependence.
Yeah, happy interdependence. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Shaman Sister Sessions. Next week is going to be an amazing special episode with Amateo Ra, and we are going to be talking about galactics and galactic beings and diving into this topic. Amateo is a top trans channel, and an amazing individual on so many levels, and has a lot of information and knowledge on this topic, as well as lots of other metaphysical topics. So it's going to be a super fun conversation. That'll be on the 11th, which is my birthday. Yay! And
special birthday episode.
Yay! So that will be Tuesday the 11th at noon Pacific. And you can watch all of our previous episodes on our YouTube channel at Shaman Sister Sessions. And also check out our Facebook page, Shaman Sister Sessions. We would love to hear from you. If you have any comments or ideas about upcoming episodes or any questions about anything, we love to hear from you. You can also email us at shamansistersessions@gmail.com. Do you have anything going on right now, Michelle, that you...
Yes, I have early bird sales just ended for my Lunar Alchemy program, which begins September 12th. But if you do register before August 1st, I do have a little special freebie that I'm throwing in. So go ahead and you can find more information about that at joyofenergy.com and click on New Moon Rising in the menu bar. And that's my New Moon Rising Lunar Alchemy course, teaching you how to delve into working with the lunar cycle in the most efficient and effective way to speed up your manifestation process and increase the power of your intentions in the world. A lot of really amazing information in there. And it's a 6-week online course.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah. How about you? Anything going on?
I don't know. I have so many things going on. I'm not even promoting anything right now.
Great. All right. Well, here, one last plug. Since Kat and I love working together so much, and it was so fun. Like, one of my favorite highlights of getting to go visit Kat last week was getting to work with her and getting to work with her on people. We love it. It's great. And so if you would like to work with us collectively, work with both of us together, we're offering a special deal where you get 3 sessions, one with Kat, one with me, and then one with us together for $1,800. So if you would like to receive the magic from both Shaman Sisters, not Shaman Sister Sessions, you are totally welcome to do so. Please reach out through our email address, shamansistersessions@gmail.com, if you'd like to take advantage and align with our alchemical work together.
Yeah, and so that would be about a month worth of work and support. Yep. And we're very supportive in our offerings.
Yes.
And yeah, so thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, for the special birthday galactic episode.
Yay!
It'll be great. Cool. All right. Take care.
Thank you, Michelle. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.